Beep de beep beep beep. Welcome to the court of the EDI Jester. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and wherever the devil you are. Because today, I am pleased to say, we are going to Kiwi land. We are in New Zealand. In an article that I picked up, which is something, you get one occasionally and you go, oh, that's good. So I'm going to share some of it with you now. And it comes from New Zealand. Hello to everyone in New Zealand who's watching me. Land of Lord of the Rings, in my book. Way. Still there, isn't it, apparently, that lovely building they bought. Not bought, built, in it, where, old Grotty Wormtongue, Grimer Wormtongue kept licking the king's ear. Was it? What's it called? Okay. Rohan. The Men of Rohan. Anyway, it's great. New Zealand. So there's some great work here in New Zealand by an individual, which was brought to my attention by the Women's Rights Network of New Zealand. The tweet to that I got it from is also in the Dubridge, so you cannot retrieve post at this time. It's there. Just checking, so I know I've said to you it's going to be there. It's still there. Women's Rights Network, okay, WRP, at WRP_New Zealand, protecting the rights of women and children, the only political party in New Zealand that puts women's interests first, okay? So that's what we've got, essentially. And the article is from a blog, and it's talking about feedback to the Ministry of Health regarding the puberty blockers evidence brief. And from what I can gather here, we have a situation where an individual, Simon Tegg, in this case, a gentleman called Simon Tegg. There's a nice smiley picture of Simon. Hello, Simon, if you're watching. And Dear Director General of Health, it begins. I am the spokesperson for the group Fully Informed. We advocate for the rights of patients and their parents to have accurate and understandable information on puberty blockers. We are pleased that the Ministry set in motion an evidence brief on puberty blockers last year. The public, the patients and their parents have been poorly served by the available practice guidelines and consent forms, as well as the previous wording on the Ministry's own website that puberty blockers were safe and fully reversible. A claim that senior clinical advisors now believe to be inappropriate. Wonderfully reasoned language there. This is why I'm not good at this stuff, right? Because I just put, oi, twats, you got it wrong. But, that's wonderfully reasoned and well-written language there from Simon. An example of how you would approach a body if you didn't want to do what I do, which is just burn them all to the ground. Right, okay. There are recent systematic evidence reviews of puberty blockers, brackets 1,2, as you'll see in the article referring to this well-referenced blog, the finding of which could be usefully summarised and presented to the public with the Ministry's imprimatur. We look forward to the Ministry's support of the rights of consumers to receive accurate and understandable information on their treatment options, and the public becoming better informed on the issue. The evidence brief was originally due to be released around the middle of this year. However, on the 22nd of August, the Ministry published a statement notifying the public that they are expanding the scope of the puberty blockers evidence brief to include studies regarding mental health and well-being outcomes. That's a quote, by the way. Now you know you're in trouble, don't you? So you go, right, as soon as we go find, oh God, no, it's mental health and well-being outcomes, right? And delaying the release to later in the year, after the election, so it's been put on pause. That would be a big red flag for me, that, mind. It would. The statement and the timing for the evidence brief release at the end of this year raises some questions. First, while the original scope of the evidence brief was the safety, reversibility and long-term clinical outcomes of puberty blockers for gender dysphoric adolescents, the expansion of the scope to include mental health and well-being outcomes is confusing, as these should have already been included in the long-term clinical outcomes focus. However, to our knowledge, there are no long-term studies reporting clinical mental health outcomes. There aren't. We don't know enough about this. There are some low-quality, short-term studies of subjective self and parent reports of mental health outcomes with mixed results. The evidence reviews systematically evaluate these studies and conclude that the evidence for mental health improvement following puberty suppression is inconclusive. The Ministry's statement suggests that the Ministry may be intending to report the mental health outcome results of the systematic reviews, i.e. that are inconclusive. Or, 2, be intending to report a selection of results from the short-term studies directly. A selection of results? Or 3, need an excuse to delay the release of the evidence brief beyond the election. That's an interesting three, isn't it? The first one being you're going to use evidence that isn't there, so you're going to lie. The second one being be intending to report a select, so you're going to cherry pick. So lying, cherry picking, or political obfuscation. Beautifully written, beautifully written. One would be entirely appropriate, he says. Intended to report the mental health. Yeah, so saying it's inconclusive. They're not going to do that. They're going to pretend it is. We know. Look at what happened with the LGBT Foundation and their ridiculous bloody report, right? He said one would be entirely appropriate. Three is understandable, though those see my points about delays below. He goes on to explain more about that. Number two is questionable and would undermine the ministry's reputation and to the integrity of New Zealand's science advisory system for reasons which I outline below. I seek clarification from the ministry that scientific integrity is paramount. If the ministry was planning on reporting on a selection of results from low-quality, short-term satisfaction psychosocial outcome studies of distressed teenagers, then, and the article continues. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to go and read the rest of it because it's a nice article and there's a nice length to it as well. It's very, very well written, and it is an actual email that's been sent to a public body that is involved in attempting to discern whether or not puberty blockers are a danger. We know they are, but you have to prove it. It's the old scientific thing that we used to have years ago, isn't it? What do you think? What do you know? What can you prove? What do you think? What do you know? What can you prove? So there's a bit of that going on there, but it's very important that I think I wanted to bring to your attention a number of things. The first one is how well it's written and what an example it is for you as a template if you are somebody who's out there, prodding these fat public bodies going, oi, you, listen up. And it's also well referenced. You would do well to not just read the content and take him on board what is being said, but also to look at the structure of the content and the structure of the document. I think it gives you a tremendous idea how best to write these types of letters, which are often involved in government consultations or systematic reviews. That's the most useful thing to get from it as well. So, I mean, an absolutely cracking article and a cracking email. Thank you very much, and a great example from New Zealand of how to do it right. But what it also highlights to me is something that I'm well aware of, and I'm sure you're well aware of too, which is that these bastards will poke their nose into anything they get 2 minutes. Be like, no is a word, right? Well, you're doing this, but you haven't taken into account the well-being in psychosocial. Yeah, off your pop, right? No is a sentence. Okay? So, but this is what they do. They come in every time. Yes, but we need to talk about their lived experience. We need to talk about this. No, you don't. No, you don't. Okay? You don't. It's that simple, all right? This is a purely scientific exercise in medicine about whether or not the application of puberty blockers to children who have not got precocious puberty. Bear that in mind, they were originally meant for precocious puberty, which is kids 6 years old, 5 years old starting puberty, where they go, oh, whoa, whoa, hold on, right? And then they put a pause on it, and then they stop them at 11 and they start then their puberty naturally. Not what these lunatics want them used for, or have been used for, that awful mother, Jazz Jennings, right? Where they go, oh, blimey, he's getting to 12, quick, stick him on the blocker. So by the time he's 18, he's got a winky like an infant. You know? That's not the same thing at all. So what the government needs to do, and what organisations like the NHS and everybody else needs to do, and what we need to call for, is these swine don't even get a seat at the table. End of story, because they are mad cultists, religious belief cultists. They're mad. You wouldn't give a seat at the table to other religious nutters, but yet we give these nutters a seat. Stop giving them a seat at the damn table. They don't get one at mine. You know, they don't. I don't even engage with anymore, right? Online, I just block them because we're doing other things. The warrior teachers are doing other things. I'm doing other things. They literally don't matter. We're gonna go right past you because you need to be completely eradicated with your lunatic nonsense. And we need to get the social sciences out of the way of the real science. So go and have a look. I think it was fantastic. Please do the courtesy for the gentleman who wrote this of reading it on the blog in the links in the Dubris. Other than that, become a warrior teacher, buy me a coffee. Great to speak with you as usual. Thank you, New Zealand, for a fantastic example of how to get this right. I'll see you all soon.